Like and subscribe for more of this scary videos, and let's begin. I used to ride my bike home late at night after my shift at the diner. It was a quiet, lonely stretch of road, just trees, an old church, and the occasional street lamp flickering in and out. I had taken this route 100 times before, but one night, something was different. As I pedaled past the church, I saw her, a woman standing at the edge of the road. She was dressed in an old-fashioned white dress, barefoot, with long dark hair hanging over her face. She didn't move, didn't react, just stood there, staring into the woods. I kept riding, trying not to look. Maybe she needed help? But something about her felt wrong. My gut screamed at me to keep going. Then, a few minutes later, I glanced over my shoulder and nearly lost control of my bike. She was there again, standing by the side of the road, even though I had ridden far past where I first saw her. I started pedaling faster. My heart pounded in my chest. I wasn't imagining this. I had passed only empty road and thick forest. There was no way she could have gotten ahead of me. Then, just as I reached the final stretch toward my neighborhood, I heard it. A whisper right in my ear. "You're going the wrong way." I swerved, nearly crashing into a ditch. My hands were shaking as I looked around. There was no one there. I didn't stop riding until I was home, locking the door behind me. The next day, I took a different route to work. A week later, I overheard some old-timers at the diner talking about that road. They mentioned a woman who had died there decades ago, a bride who had crashed her car near the church. People still saw her sometimes, standing by the road. Some said she was trying to warn travelers. Others said she was looking for someone to take her place. I've never ridden that way again. This is a story my friend Alex told me a few years ago, and to this day, I don't know what to make of it. He swears it happened, and honestly, the way he told it, the look in his eyes, it still gives me chills. It happened on a late summer night. Alex and his girlfriend Jess were riding their bikes back from a friend's house. They had taken a longer route, one that cut through a quiet, rural stretch just outside town. It was the kind of road with no streetlights, just trees on both sides and the occasional rundown barn. They were talking, laughing, their bike lights flickering over the cracked pavement. Then, as they rounded a bend, Jess suddenly stopped pedaling. "Do you see that?" she whispered. Up ahead, just off the side of the road, was a group of men. 4, maybe 5. They were standing in a circle around something on the ground, their backs turned to Alex and Jess. Their posture was tense, stiff, like they were concentrating. At first, Alex thought maybe it was a deer. Maybe they had hit it, or were trying to move it. But something about the way they were standing, too still, too focused, made his stomach tighten. "Let's go," he muttered. But Jess was already stepping off her bike. "What if someone's hurt?" Alex reached for her arm, but she pulled away. She took a few steps forward, hesitating like she wasn't sure if she should call out. And then, in perfect unison, the men turned to face them. Not quickly, not startled, just turned. Alex said it was like watching mannequins rotate, slow and deliberate. Their faces were in shadow, but he swore their eyes, every single one of them, were locked on him. Then one of them smiled. Not a normal smile, too wide, too forced. Jess gasped and stumbled backward. That was all it took. Alex grabbed her wrist, yanked her back onto her bike. They didn't speak. They didn't look back. They just pedaled as fast as they could. When they finally reached town, Alex was gasping for breath, his hands shaking. "What the hell was that?" he panted. Jess didn't answer. She was staring straight ahead, eyes glassy, like she hadn't even heard him. He walked her home that night. She barely spoke, just nodded when he told her to text him in the morning. But she never did. The next day, Jess was gone. Her parents said she had gone out early and never came back. No calls, no messages. The police searched everywhere, her usual routes, the fields, the old barns, but there was nothing, not even her bike. Alex was questioned, of course. He told them everything, even about the men on the road. But what could they do? Who would believe it? Weeks passed, then months. Eventually, people stopped talking about Jess, but Alex never forgot. And something in him changed. He stopped coming around, stopped talking to people. He lost weight, looked sick. When I finally saw him again, months later, I barely recognized him. The worst part? He didn't seem to care that Jess was gone. When I asked about her, he just shrugged. "She's still out there," he muttered. And then he smiled, too wide, too forced. Danny had always loved riding his bike at night. There was something peaceful about the empty streets, the cool air, the way the world felt like it belonged only to him. That night, his girlfriend, Rachel, insisted on coming along. "I just don't like the idea of you riding alone so late," she said. They set off just after midnight, cutting through the outskirts of town. The streetlights ended after a few miles, and soon it was just the two of them and the dark road ahead. They rode in silence for a while. The only sounds were the hum of their tires and the occasional rustling of trees. Then, as they passed an old construction site, Rachel slowed down. "Danny, do you see that?" He followed her gaze. Up ahead, near the road's edge, a figure stood barely visible in the dim moonlight. A woman, wearing what looked like a long dress or nightgown, her hair hanging over her face. She wasn't moving. Danny felt a shiver creep up his spine. "Let's just go," he said, pedaling faster. But as they got closer, something was wrong. The woman wasn't standing still. She was swaying slightly, like she was shifting from foot to foot. And then, just as they passed, she turned. Her face was pale, almost gray, and her eyes, dark, sunken, locked onto his. She whispered something, so soft he almost thought he imagined it. Rachel gasped. "Danny, go!" They pedaled as fast as they could. He didn't dare look back. A mile down the road, they finally slowed, gasping for breath. Danny turned to Rachel. "Are you okay?" She nodded shakily. "Did you hear what she said?" "No." Rachel hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "She said, not you, her." Danny's stomach dropped. He grabbed Rachel's hand. "We need to go home." They made it back in record time. Rachel slept at his place that night, but neither of them really slept. Every noise, every shadow outside his window made them flinch. By morning, Rachel seemed different, quiet, distant. She barely spoke on the ride home. And later that evening, when Danny called, she didn't answer. By the next day, she was gone. Her parents thought she had run away. The police found her bike, perfectly upright, right where they had seen the woman. But no sign of Rachel. No footprints, no struggle. Just gone. Weeks passed. Danny stopped riding at night, stopped sleeping. And then, one night, he saw her again. Not Rachel, the woman, standing outside his house, swaying. This time, she wasn't whispering. She was smiling.